Hello and welcome back. So we have finally made it to section 5. This is the final section in our paper, and it's a bit of an odd one because it claims to be just one question. You'll be given a chord progression and we need to work out some things about it. Although really we can break it down into several mini questions, and I like to break it down into 2 separate parts, which is why I'm doing this video as part 1, and then I'll be doing a later one on part 2. So this, I'll just give a bit of background on what we have here. We have something called a Bach chorale. So this is a 4-voice progression for kind of a choir. If you imagined it as 4 unique lines, which is why the stems go different ways. So this kind of line up here would be the soprano line. This would be the highest voice. This line here will be slightly lower. This would be the alto voice. We have this line up here on the bass clef, kind of in the upper range of it. This is the tenor voice, and this lower one is the bass voice. This is the lowest voice in the kind of choir, and it's showing 4 different separate lines of music on 2 separate lines. So it's just a bit of musical shorthand to make things a bit easier on for piano. And these Bach chorales were written by Bach, hence the German. So we are going to have a look at these in regards to how we actually have to answer the question, because all this background on Bach chorales is quite useful, and Bach chorales do tend to show up quite a bit in university and kind of theory papers at diploma standard. But for now, let's just work how we can work this out to give us marks on this exam. So for the first part, we will be asked to work out the chords within these boxes. So chord A is asking us to work out what chord this is, chord B, chord C, chord D, and chord E. And we have to write this down here. So this can be done in several stages. And I think the most important thing to do is to write out what notes we have. We have G. Oh, and just a quick note. Always, although we are just kind of looking at this box, it's important not to get carried away and only look at this box and ignore everything else around it. Particularly here, we need to remember that we're in the key of G major, or it might be E minor. We'll find out later on, hopefully. And anytime we have an F, so for example, if we were asked to find out what this chord is, this wouldn't be an F, and if it would be an F sharp. Although if you're just looking focusing in on that one chord within the box, you might forget that. So it's important to check any accidentals nearby or in the key signature. So we have G, B, D, and another G. So there we go. That's all we have to do to start off with to get us kind of the ball rolling. We have to work out what actual notes we're using. And it looks like we've got a G, a B, and a D. So I'm going to write out, I'm assuming this is treble clef, because you'll be given manuscript paper in the exam, and I would recommend you doodle on it to kind of work things out. So let's write out these notes. And the first job is to find out a position in which they stack. Ideally, what we want is, I always think of snowmen. So we kind of have these 3 kind of balls nicely stacked on top of each other, and that's kind of the look we want. So let's write out these notes. Let's try it with D at the bottom, G, and B. And this isn't right, because with this D going up to G, that's too big. That's not a snowman. That's kind of a snowman who's lost his trousers. We need to make them stack neatly on top of each other. Although I think if we move this D up here, so let's rewrite it. We'll go G, B, D. There we go. That's a nice stack. So G, B, D. So we know we have some kind of G chord, and I'll write that in. So G. Now we need to work out what type of chord this is. We know it's a triad because there's only 3 notes. The G's repeated. But how do we work out the quality of the chord? Well, we just did that in the previous question. So I think it's about time I draw out another piano keyboard. Of course, in the exam, you will already have this drawn out because we've used it so much, and you don't have to keep drawing it out. You can just keep going back to the old one. Excuse me. Excuse me. just keep going up a bit. Drew out too many. I'll just go up a bit further. I'll probably use it. I normally don't write out enough, and I'll just label this to make life easier for me. And we'll also need our tone. Oh no, not our tone, semitone thing. We will need our 1, 2, 3, 4, and just like in the last one, we're not going to have to actually go that far in terms of our semitones. So we have a minor second. We have a second, we have a minor third, we have a major third, and just in case we need it, we need our tritone. So let's work out what interval we have here. So we're going from G to B, so starting on G, we are going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, that is 4 semitones, that's a major third. And then B to D, so we can go 1, 2, 3, that's a minor third. So major third because it was 4 semitones, minor third because it's 3 semitones, which means we got a major third on the bottom, minor third on top, which means we have a G major chord. Which suggests to me that this piece is in G major. And let's keep going. So we have one more thing we have to check. Because G needs to be at the bottom, we need to check if G's here. And it is. It's at the bottom. So we're going to always at the end check the bass and make sure that that is the note that it stacks nicely up, and that's the root of the chord. So for example, if that wasn't a G there, that was one of the other notes, like say we had a B at the bottom, then that wouldn't be G major, it would be G major over B, or G major first inversion. There's several ways we can write this, which is kind of the point of the module. It's not just the theory of music, it's the language and theory of music. There are many different ways to write out kind of the answer. Many different types of musicians can point at the same thing and go, oh, that's a flat 2 chord. No, it's not a flat 2 chord, it's a Neapolitan sixth, but in not uninverted, or oh no, it's a tritone sub or a flat 5 chord. No, what would they call it? They would call it a sub 5 chord. But it's about working it out how you want to work it out. In fact, you could work out, because this is in G, you could label this chord as I. But it would definitely have to make sure it's in G major, and if you modulate later on, it might be slightly more complicated. So I'd recommend for now, the easiest method is just to write it out in plain terms, G major. Keep it nice and simple. So let's go on and let's have a look at this next chord. I'm just going to, oh, I shouldn't have got rid of the eraser. I'm going to write out this next chord. So I'm going to write out, what do we have? We have C. Remember, this is bass clef, so we have the note C. Actually, I should write it out here. C. We have another C. A G. And an E. So C, G, and E. So C, G, and E. That doesn't stack nicely because the C's up there and it's got a gap. So let's try it. Let's try it with the C, the E, and there we go. Stacks nicely. We have a C, E, G. So we can work out what that is. I think I've been through this one quite a few times in all the examples. So C to E, let's work out the semitones. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 4 semitones, which we can tell is a major third. And oh, actually, I should have put C here because it's at the bottom, because it's at the bottom of the stack. And then we have E to G, which is 1, 2, 3, minor, which is a minor third. So minor third. major third on the bottom, minor third on top. We know that the major on the bottom is more important, so we know that this is going to be a major triad. So this is going to be C, major. And we've written that in, and it's great. We could just go on. Apart from, it's always important to check, because it will eventually come up, I'm sure, because kind of looking ahead, we can see that it does come up, but we need to make sure that this C is at the bottom here in the bass part, and it looks like it is, so we can leave that as C major. Let's go on to this next chord. So what do we have? We have E, G, another E, and a C. So we have the note C, E, G. Oh, I just saw that a second ago. Here we go, C, E, G. It's the same chord as before, so we could put C major. A lot of the time, the same chords will come up. So don't go, oh no, it can't be that because we had that earlier. It can happen. And then we have to do our final check. Is the C at the bottom? No, it's not. On the bottom of the chord is this E. So I'll quickly explain about inversions. So if we have the second, so if we take our C, E, G and we had a C at the bottom, that would be normal. That would be just kind of root position. But if we had an E at the bottom, then it kind of changes the nature of the chord. And so because it's the middle kind of voice that's been put at the bottom, we call this first inversion because it's the first one up from the bass or from the root. And if we were to have a G at the bottom, so turn this note to G, it would be second inversion. So here you could put C major, first inversion. Another way to do this is just to say which chord is, which note of the triad is at the bottom, and I would put over E. Of course, if you wanted to write that out, so you could literally, instead of this slash, which is a common thing, you could literally write C major over, kind of phonetically, and then E. And that would be fine as well. You can answer this many different ways. You can use the numerals, you can use jazz symbols, as long as it's kind of a clear chord symbol or explaining what's going on, you're allowed to do it. Again, this is the language and theory of music, not just the theory of music. There's not a rule of doing it. It's more about communicating what is going on here. And I think it's important to, as a musician, develop many different ways of being able to talk about the things that you're doing, because if you try explaining what's going on to a classical musician and you start talking about augmented sixths, then they're not going to understand what you're talking about. And it's always better to find kind of a common ground between them and be able to speak their language, as it were. So it's always good to kind of venture out and attempt new things. But for this one, I'll try and keep it nice and simple. Just say it's G major over whatever it may be. So let's have a look at this chord here. We have G, oh, hang on, G, B, D, and another G. Now, I probably wouldn't have actually rubbed this out from earlier, so I could have just done it again, but just for argument's sake, so we're going to have G, B, D. That's a nice happy snowman, so we know it's going to be G. Work out the intervals, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a major, that's 4 semitones, which is a major third. B to D, 1, 2, 3, minor third. Major third, minor third, that is a major triad, because the major third is at the bottom. So G major. And then we have to check what if the G is at the bottom, because we said that it's a G chord and G is at the bottom, so we can leave it as is. So again, we have the same chord coming up. If a Bach chorale doesn't modulate much, I mean, it starts to modulate here, but if it doesn't modulate much, we're going to get the same chords over and over again, just in different inversions. So it's normally going to be the 1 chord, the 4 chord and 5 chord are going to be the major chords that show up the most, and then you're also going to have the 2 chord and the 6 chord show up quite a bit, and it's going to be kind of all those diatonic triads that show up constantly. You might get a couple of out of key ones like the 5 of 5 or the major 2 chord sort of thing, but mostly we're going to get the same chords. So don't start to panic if your chords look very similar. It does happen. Let's have a look at this last one. So we have D. We have, what was that? That's a D again. And then we have an A up here. And you might look at that, and if you're just looking at this one box, you might go, oh, that's an F. But then you have to remember, if you zoom all the way back, we're in the key of G. We have F sharps in our key signature. So this is an F. This is F sharp. Very important, because that's going to change. Well, it would give us the wrong answer if we put it without the accidental. So let's work out what that chord is using our method. We should be pretty good at this point. So I always start off with the whatever one's at the bottom when I start writing out the stack, because it usually means we don't have to rewrite it. D, F sharp. Gotta remember that sharp. And then A. There we go, D, F sharp, A. So let's have a go at working out what that is. We can go D to start off with. Then is it major or is it minor? Well, D to F sharp, we can go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 semitones. That's a major third. And then F sharp to A, we can go 1, 2, 3. 3 semitones, minor third. Oh, that looks a bit big. I don't want to confuse myself, even though I'm going to rub this out shortly. And I've already worked out the answer, because it's quite obvious from looking at it. So minor third. Major third, minor third, major on the bottom, major triad. So we've got something different now, because we started to modulate into our new key here with the addition of the C sharp. But that comes later on in the piece, where we have to start looking at working out what key we're in and the cadence. And the final thing to check is what is at the bottom. We've said it's D major. Is D at the bottom? It is indeed. So it's D major in kind of root position. We can just leave it as that, because each of these is worth 2 marks. And the last thing we want is to lose marks for you lose 1 mark for every mistake sort of thing. So let's say it was actually with the F sharp in the bass, and you didn't put over F sharp or in first inversion, then you lose a mark for that. But also, you could have lost a mark for that if you left that as F natural when you were writing it out. You went, oh, that's an F, because just kind of looking at it on its own without considering the context, and you put that as F natural. Well, that would have been a minor third followed by a major third, meaning you would have put major there, minor, so D minor, and not an inversion. So you could have lost 2 marks for that, which means that even though you've worked out D and even though you've written out the stack, you've got it wrong, which would be tragic. So always check the key signature and check for accidentals. For example, there's a C here. We've got to remember there's a C sharp before it, so that's actually a C sharp if it were. So those are quite easy ones, because they are all triads. And there's something I should probably mention, which is sevenths. In fact, I should definitely mention it, because it's the other type of chord that comes up in Bach chorales all the time, normally on the cadences. So we're going to have to work out what a... in fact, I'm going to rewrite this slightly. This is probably going to come off quite badly, but I'm going to work out how to... Yeah, let's... crop that out quickly. badly. We're going to rewrite this note as C sharp. So what do we have here? So if we wrote out, so sometimes the chords aren't three notes. They're not our triads, our three and thirds. They are sevenths, which means they're triads with seventh on top. I'm going to need the red pen. So I'd write out, kind of work out what this is, and C sharp. Lovely. What do we have? So we have a D, a C sharp, a F sharp. Got to remember to put these on, and an A. So D, F sharp, A, C sharp. And this kind of chord can come up. If you have a four note, if you go, oh, those are four different notes here, then you're going to have to work out how to stack all four on top of each other. Kind of like just an extra tall snowman. So that stack works quite nicely, but let's work out what chord that is, because it would no longer be D major, it would be a type of seventh chord. And the three main types of seventh chords are major, so it would be D major 7, for example. There are minor, which would be minor 7. And then there's dominant 7, which would just be 7. And the important note to make the distinction, because major 7 and dominant 7 are only one note difference. If it's a 4-note chord and it's minor, kind of the bottom of the triad you would work out, so that's a major third, that's a minor third. So it's going to be a major triad. If this was minor, so a kind of minor third followed by a major third, and it's got 7th on top, it's typically going to be D minor 7. There are other types. There's the major minor chords and diminished ones, although that definitely wouldn't be diminished because you would have a major on top, obviously. But if it's a minor triad underneath, there are other ones, but typically it's going to be a minor 7th of some description. If it's major, so you have a major third at the bottom and a minor third on top, it's this top note we need to watch out for. If it's only one semitone away from the note above, so that would be D, the root of the triad, so that's C sharp to D, that is a major 7. But if it's lowered one, so say for example C natural, if this was a C natural here, then D, F sharp, A, C natural would be a dominant 7 because it's kind of 2 semitones or a tone away from this top note. And the 7th chords can be quite difficult, but if you work out it's a 7th, you've definitely got to kind of scribble that down. And there's many different types of 7ths, so it's probably worth looking at them on their own. We've had a look at them in class, but I'll probably do a video just on 7ths at some point. I think most of what you're going to get is going to be triads. That's typically what Bach wrote with, and then just normally for cadences, he wrote out those kind of 7th chords because they lead better, the dominant 7th sort of thing, and also for approaching cadences with the kind of 2-7, 5-7-1 sort of progressions. But the main takeaway from this is if you've got a 4-note chord, you've got a 7th, so definitely write down 7th in here somewhere, and then try and work it out as a stack. Work out if it's a major triad on the bottom or a minor triad, and then just work out the interval between this top note. So I don't want to get too bogged down with the 7ths because they are kind of complicated, and I don't want to kind of flush your brain out after we've kind of gone through all this. Because it's going to be mostly triads, and it's very simple. It's just if a 7th were to pop up, just remember to at least write 7th and then try and work out what type of 7th out of the many different varieties it is. So let's just summarize. So you get into doing this question. You've already got the kind of notes that you need from the previous pages. So we need to firstly work out kind of, have a look at what key we're in, because that's going to tell us what notes are altered throughout the piece. And have a look at writing out what notes these are, just to make it easier. So, write out next to it G, B, D, G. Then what we want to do is we want to use that manuscript we have available to us. We want to make it into snowmen, and then find a way that makes it stack up nicely without any gaps or without any overlap. And then we want to write out whatever the bottom of the stack is as the beginning of our chord. We work out the quality by checking the major thirds and minor third intervals. That gives us our kind of quality. And then we need to work out, is it an inversion? Just look, I've said it's a G major chord. Is G at the bottom? Yes, it is. I put it as a C major chord. Is C at the bottom? No, it isn't. Therefore, it's over E, or it's in first inversion. And that's enough to get us through this question. Now, this skill is going to be useful for the next one, which is looking at key and cadences, because even though it's not asked for that one, I work out the chords kind of almost fully, so I know what's going on and I can work out the cadences. So I will do a video on just on these kind of seventh chords in the future, hopefully. But for now, I think that's enough for this question. Let's have a look at part 2. I'll see you in the next video.